All right. What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan. And today we're here with Dr. Michael Turner. And I have to really explain to you guys how Dr. Turner and I came to know each other, because he's heard of me. I've heard of him. We ended up knowing similar people. We ended up working with him. We've been working on his brand and his podcast. But ultimately, what this guy has done is produce some of the best content that we've seen. I mean, he's very, very educated when it comes to helping people along the lines of their health. And the reason I wanted to bring him on here was to talk to you guys about leveraging your health and working on your health to become successful in other areas of your life. So I'm excited to have you here, Dr. Turner. Do you mind saying hello to everybody? Then we'll hop in.
Thank you, Josh. Glad to be here. Glad to talk with your audience today, and really looking forward to it. I used to be a school teacher, so I enjoy education. I enjoy inspiration, and it's going to be fun.
Well, see, and that just lends the first question right there. I mean, school teacher to doctor, explain that one. Because you became a medical doctor, not just like a doctor of English or something, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Well, I was finishing up at Stanford. I was a pre-med. I had taken all the tests, had all the letters of recommendation, et cetera. But I was also feeling a little bit burned out, speaking of, right? So we can talk about that at some point. So I was like, gosh, I got to take some time off before I go to med school. Like, I'm not ready to continue this grind, tests and labs and problem sets and homework and staying up late and all this, right? So I'm thinking, I'm going to take some time off. I need to get my head right and live life a little bit. What do I want to do? Well, I had always enjoyed tutoring. And I had a buddy who was actually a classroom teacher at the time. So I moved down to where he was, became roommates. He got me an interview in the school district, and voila, I was a fifth grade classroom teacher, wow, fresh out of college for a year.
Where were you
went
teaching?
On ultimately with a couple other teaching jobs. Yeah.
Wow. And where were you teaching at? Was it in near Stanford, or where were you at?
So good question. This was in Fresno, California. So my buddy was in Fresno, and I was a fifth grade classroom teacher. And then the following year, I moved back to the Bay Area, and I taught 7th and 8th grade at a middle school science.
Wow. Yeah. Science doesn't surprise me. What's funny is I feel like there's like math brains and science brains. I understand math and science. It intrigues me to death, but I have a horrible retention rate with it. So I got to work on that. That's something I want to work on. I love to see people who can retain and apply science effectively. So you're still in Fresno, aren't you?
No, so now I'm in Washington State. Yeah, so
okay.
I'm based out of Washington State, Southeast Washington, Tri-Cities.
Yeah, running away from California is always a good idea, right? I'm just kidding. They're all running to Idaho here, so we joke about that. So big question for you though is, you've recently, obviously you've become a successful doctor, and you're saying, I want to start going online. What about the online space intrigued you, and why did you decide to start transitioning to teaching, training, coaching, and stuff online?
Great question. First of all, the ability to reach more people effectively, right? So traditionally, it's one person venturing to my office to spend one defined period of time with me, right? And what if I could reach, obviously, 100, 1,000, 10,000 people at once via a Zoom call, a mass webinar, a wellness online event, something like that. Or harkening back to my days as a teacher, to create curriculum. What if I could create a curriculum, right? What if I recorded myself and pulled together a multimedia presentation about how to have a healthy brain, or most potent anti-aging concepts, or boosting your testosterone naturally, or do you really have a thyroid problem, right? Like whatever it is, if I could distill some of the best teaching that I enjoy engaging with my clients about into some sort of curriculum, and they could access that 24/7 from wherever, that would be fantastic, right? And enable me to reach more people. And then as well, just personally gave me some more time, energy, freedom, right? And so I could be with my kids or my grandkids, or I could work from a nice little Airbnb in Puget Sound some week and still run my practice and do health and wellness. So yeah, that's the idea.
Do you have grandkids?
I do. So I have a 1-year-old grandkid. Wow. Yeah.
Holy cow. I thought you were like in your 20s. This is proof, guys.
That's kind. Yeah, I'm 47. I was born in 75. So I have a younger daughter who has now a young son. So here I am as a grandpa. It's psychologically been a little bit of a transition for me, to be perfectly honest, but I'm enjoying it as well. I love kids.
Yeah, that's amazing. Totally personal question, but I was just curious. So, and this is where it's kind of funny, that kind of dovetailed really well. Our audience will love that, right? Is that, you really help people with learning how to age better. And
Yes.
obviously you're doing well yourself because you totally had me fooled. So I'm curious, you talk about the 5 different dimensions of health and leveraging those to slow down your aging, become more healthy and everything. I want to ask you before we dive into those 5, what's the feasibility of this, right? Because most people who come in and pitch fitness to the entrepreneur, right, or somebody who's
Mhm.
considers themselves more busy, they a lot of times they don't take into account the busy lifestyle or how difficult some of these things can be for people. So I'm just kind of curious from a feasibility perspective, how feasible is it to use these 5 dimensions?
Great point, Josh. They're all feasible. They're all feasible. They're each kind of like a layer, like onion, right? So you can go, my job is to give you something actionable today by the end of the conversation that's feasible for every single person on all 5 dimensions. But beyond that, you can go into depth on all 5 of them as well, right?
Right.
Another way I look at it's like martial arts. You got, first degree belt and you got all the way 10th degree black belt, right? It's like, how far do you want to go on depth on it? I
Yeah.
personally, I'm hung up about health and wellness. I love it. I mean, if I ask the question, what is your most important asset, right? What's your most valuable asset? I think with a little bit of introspection and cogitation, we realize it's our health. That's actually our most
Right.
valuable asset, right? Because otherwise, no, your assets can't be suitably maintained or enjoyed. What's it worth if you have this business that you're too sick to get out of bed and run every day because your energy is not there, right? Or you're exhausted, or you're in the hospital back and forth, or you're getting, chemotherapy because you got early cancer because you stressed yourself out for decades, or, your diabetes got out of control. And so then you had kidney problems. So then you're on dialysis 3 days a week, right? It's like, how can you suitably enjoy or maintain any other asset or personal relationship, frankly, if you don't have the health to do so? So it's your greatest asset. So I get hung up on this question of what would it feel like to be as healthy as I could possibly be? That's the
Yeah.
question. What would it feel like to be as healthy as I could possibly be? How good would that feel? What do I need to do to get there? And from the point of view of your audience, what would that return on investment be? Right? What would
Yeah.
the ROI be for you if you actually got as healthy as you possibly could right now? You don't have to be your 25-year-old self. You don't have to be the same as a person next to you in the gym. That's not the point, but just you yourself, where you're at. If we could touch every part of your body and get you dialed in, what would the ROI be? How good would that feel? That's a compelling question for me. But I like to make things simple and actionable for everybody as well. So we always give an entry point.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it almost becomes an addiction too, when you start to realize, oh, I can have more energy from doing this thing. And then you add the next thing in. And for most of you who listen to this show, you have your own show, you're trying to produce content. It's virtually impossible to produce content without being at your peak, because it comes across horrible if you don't have that energy level. So I do want you to dive into the 5 steps though, Dr. Turner, if you're willing to do
Yeah,
that,
of
because
course.
5 dimensions, right? 5 different areas or layers, like you said, of an onion to building that energy in yourself and living longer.
Happy to. Yeah. Where do you want to start off? What's looking most engaging to you, Josh?
I mean, obviously step number 1, right? But
Okay.
you had them over here. I'm going to pull it up here on my phone.
Sure.
She texted them to me like, oh, this is awesome. Let's start with sleep. It's actually number 3,
Okay.
because most entrepreneurs are like, oh, I sleep 4 hours a night. I think that's impossible. But anyways, carry on.
Yeah. So the more we study sleep, the more important we are finding that it is, essentially. I'll give you a couple examples. Let's talk about your immune system. So one of your most important immune system cells is called a natural killer, NK, natural killer cell. And this thing is important not only for viruses, bacteria, but also for cancer. A lot of people don't realize that a healthy immune system is also an anti-cancer immune system. Another way of saying that is that your body is constantly producing cancerous cells every day, but they're also successfully, ideally, being identified and then destroyed by your immune system. So your natural killer cell is a linchpin of that, especially in its anti-cancer role. Now, here's what's interesting. They've done studies. If they take perfectly healthy and perfectly well-rested people, okay, no sleep debt. And if I take this perfectly healthy and perfectly well-rested person, and just for one night, I deprive them of sleep, and they only get 4 hours of sleep, okay, then I take them back to the lab, draw their blood, isolate the natural killer cell, put it in a petri dish, bombard it with different kinds of viruses and bacteria and different sort of challenges, and see how active this thing is. The natural killer cell activity has dropped off after just one night of 4 hours of sleep. Okay.
Wow. Jeez.
Further punchline, let's ask the question, how much does it drop off? Let's quantify that. And the answer is 30%. Okay.
Ooh.
So one of the most important immune cells in your body is down 30% in its function after one night of 4 hours of restricted sleep. That's striking.
Jeez.
So what would that do after a week or a month or a lifestyle of crummy sleep? And the answer is your immune system's just slowly getting run into the ground. You're probably running on a 30% immune system or something like that after a period of time. This is also the reason why as soon as you become sleep deprived, very quickly along with that becomes you get sick, right? You're going to notice that your you got a sore throat and you're coughing and all this stuff is because your immune system's not where it needs to be. So that's one dimension of sleep. Another one would be simply it's your cognitive acuity, your mental energy and such like that. So they've done studies in long haul truckers, and they've shown that if you're up for 18 hours in a row, you become cognitively and neuromuscularly impaired in your performance as a trucker to the equivalent of having a blood alcohol of 0.05. Okay.
Jeez.
Yes. So after 18 hours straight, you're driving on the road, you're functioning at a diminished capacity equivalent to a blood alcohol level 0.05. Or another aspect of sleep we could talk about would be your brain health and its involvement as far as dementia and Alzheimer's, right? So there's a huge connection between the quality of your sleep and the onset of Alzheimer's. This has been studied at UC Berkeley over the last 10, 15 years. And essentially at night, especially during the deepest stages of sleep, there's a cleansing process. You can think of it like a self-cleaning cycle, like a dishwasher or something that's going on in your brain through the cerebrospinal fluid, which circulates and flushes out some of these toxic metabolic products that build up. And in the case of Alzheimer's, it's something called the amyloid protein. Well, if you get choppy sleep, there becomes increased levels and increased deposition of amyloid protein over time. So what they did at Berkeley, which is fascinating, is they basically predicted people's Alzheimer's onset, right? Jeez. They took people and said, oh, you're 60, you don't have it right now, but based on how crummy your sleep is, ma'am, you're going to likely develop Alzheimer's within the next 5-10 years, something like that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and so I've heard a lot of different studies on this, but what do you consider to be an optimal sleep pattern? I mean, is it different for everybody, or is there like a set? Because I know they talk about what are those cycles? It's like your sleep pattern at night. I think it's like every 2 hours. I've heard it all, and I'm just kind of curious what your take is on it. Like, is it a certain hour amount?
Yeah, you're on the right track. So I would say there's a couple ways to look at it. First of all, you want your sleep to be front loaded. In other words, earlier than midnight being better, right? So 6 hours of sleep, let's say between 10 a.m. and 4 a.m., okay, or 10 p.m. rather than 4 a.m., is not the same as 6 hours of sleep, let's say 1 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Right.
You with me? It's front loaded in terms of physiological benefit. Another way to think about that is if we didn't have modern technology and lighting all this, when would you go to bed, right? And, recently I was actually hiking through a national park in South America. Okay, as remote as it gets, no cell phone service, nothing like that. It was really interesting. What was my daily pattern? We'd eat dinner around 6:30. By 7:15, dinner was done. It was pitch black. It was like stars were up. It was like lights out. I'll go, okay, I guess I'm going to bed now. I was going to bed at like 7:45, 8, right? And then you snap up when the sun comes up about 5:30, something like that, right? Yeah. So physiologically, you're front loaded in terms of your natural biorhythms to get that sleep. So that's one thing. Shift your sleep earlier. And then, you need to be aiming for a solid 8 hours, honestly, just to give it a number, right? Teenagers need more, 9, 10, adults maybe slightly less. But the simple litmus test for yourself is, do you ever find yourself being tired? Do you find yourself needing to take a nap, right? You shouldn't, right? So if every afternoon you're looking to take a nap or an energy drink or coffee, you're not getting enough sleep and you need more than you are currently, getting. So,
yeah. Well, I feel like I could interview you about that concept for the entire time, because I'm curious. I'm totally a morning person. So going to sleep at 9 o'clock for me is not a problem. Like, I'm an old man when it comes to sleeping, but Tyler, who right, his wife and they will stay up till 1 or 2 every night, and that's when they go to bed. And then they wake up at 8 to 9 or whatever it is. It ends up being 8 hours, but to me, I'm like, aren't you still tired? To me, I just feel groggy waking up that late in the day. But I'd love to hear more about that. You have a whole show on this, so go check out his show, guys. We'll post it in the description because he goes into depth on this. But I want to move on to the second dimension. The second one I want to cover is actually eating and diet. And I want to throw a term out there because you've hooked my whole office on this. Ginkgo biloba. What is it? Why is it? How is it used in the diet?
Yeah, ginkgo is extraordinary. It's a tree and comes out of China, if I believe, mainland Asia, been around for thousands of years, used in traditional Chinese medicine, a lot of health benefits. What I love about it is it directly improves blood flow to your brain. Okay, you can take some ginkgo and we could measure blood flow to your brain within hours subsequent, and there's increased blood flow to the brain. That's pretty extraordinary. Another way of saying that is there's a very famous brain researcher named Dr. Daniel Amen, A-M-E-N. You may have heard of him. He gives talks. He's written books. He's been all over the internet. He's been a presence now for probably 15, 20 years in the field. And he has the largest private database of brain scans. He does metabolic scans of the brain to see which areas are active or inactive. He works a lot with, let's say, concussion in the NFL and former players, that type of thing, right? Well, here's what's interesting. I was at a national meeting, national anti-aging conference in Las Vegas. Danny Amon's on stage presenting all his data, his graphs and pictures and all this stuff. And he kind of made an offhand comment, but it was so crucial. I wrote it down. I've never forgotten it, right? He says, here's the deal. He says, all my best brains take ginkgo. That was his quote. All of my best brains take ginkgo. And as soon as he had that, I was like, well, that's good enough for me. If it's good enough for this guy and all his best brains, then like, I'm on it. Where's my ginkgo?
You're like, I take a pill, I'm in his club, I'm in, man.
Exactly. So I was all over that the next day. It's got some other benefits too. It's got some good antioxidant benefits and such. So, and it's inexpensive, readily available in high quality form online. So
yeah. Well, so definitely get on that. I'm curious. We can't actually say that on here, but definitely consult your doctor on that one. I got to be careful or I'm gonna get in trouble. People are like, you told me to take this and now you're in trouble. Anyways, moral of the story is though, is like, that's something you can consume easily. I have found working with anybody trying to lose weight, because I tried to lose weight for a long time and then finally kicked in a couple things and it changed it all for me, was that for me, it was simply, instead of trying to pull things out of my diet, it was putting healthy things into my diet. Because then it didn't feel like I was taking away from myself. So I'm kind of curious, like how you're helping people to take that step and start eating healthier before they need it, right? Because I'm 28, still don't quote unquote need it now for my everyday activities, but I will need it in the future, right? And obviously I need it now, but.
Good point. I like your idea, Josh, there about you can't have a deprivation model working, right? So when I talk to people, they're like, I need to eat better. I'm like, okay, let's talk about what we are going to do. And then also let's talk about moderation. And it can't just be a list of a whole bunch of stuff you have to avoid, because then of course your mind's feeling deprived and your mind's focusing on what you can't have. And it's just, the psychology of all that part. So moderation is a key concept. So yeah, we're trying to cut back sugar. We're trying to cut back saturated fat. We're trying to cut back animal products in general. It's well known purely from a cardiovascular viewpoint, from an anti-aging viewpoint, that a plant-based diet is the best. Maybe occasional dairy here and there, lean meat here and there, but predominantly plant-based is going to be the best. So, but this is moderation, and also understanding that food has a function other than just purely nutritional in your body, right? There are social dynamic elements of food. There's taste, there's joy of living. I'm a big foodie, frankly. I'm the biggest foodie around. Like, I mean, take me to a buffet and, a charcuterie board or a tapas bar, and I'm just like a kid in a candy store, like sampling everything, Yeah, I'll have some sangria and a little bit of creme brulee and like whatever, bring it on. I just love flavors. It's part of being alive for me. So anyway, you gotta have a little moderation in it, and just I don't have seconds, I don't have huge desserts, things like that. But to get someone started, we'll have them pick one goal that they want to work on, and people know where they need to start to work. That's what's interesting, right? It has to be individualized. And so I there's no one size fits all. I don't come to someone and say the first thing you need to do is stop eating so much McDonald's, because some people don't have a problem with that, or you need to cut out sugar. Some people don't have a problem with that. Some people are stress eating, right? Some people are eating late at night, who knows? So we get individualized. I tell them to pick one thing, baby steps, we make some moderation, and we kind of work from there. But as far as bringing things in, yeah, we want to ultimately be bringing in more plants. We want to bring in more clean water. You want to be bringing in more fiber, fruits, vegetables. For people who don't like salads, I'm a big fan of making smoothies, right? Personally, it's just a lot easier for me. I don't always have time to sit there and make a salad, right?
Yeah. And they get old pretty quick.
Right. Yeah, it gets old, right? But I can pull out a blender and throw some baby spinach and a bunch of other stuff in there, and it can feel good and taste good too. So.
See, that's funny. One of our employees here in the office, she can't even stomach lettuce. She hates lettuce, which is funny to me, because I can eat lettuce all day, but smoothies are just such a great option for you if you're like, I can't eat something. It's usually a texture thing, and you can overpower that with apple juice or something, right? That's my belief on it. But so cool. Well, let's move on to the next one, right? Exercise obviously being a huge one.
Yeah. My point here, I gave a talk recently on the most potent anti-aging strategies. I was actually a guest on someone's podcast. And as I went through that talk, the single most potent anti-aging strategy is consistent exercise. okay,
Right.
above anything else that could be done. So it's fascinating how exercise renews the body. I mean, we all know it's good for you. We know we should be getting some more, et cetera. But the more you learn about it, the more compelling it becomes. Everything from brain health to heart, lung health, obviously, strength of your musculoskeletal system, immune system, testosterone levels in men, all of this stuff, inflammation levels, all of this, deep sleep. So if you exercise in a given day, you will sleep better at night. That's well known. So there's all these connections where it's just multifaceted renewing process. But in particular, when I start to talk to someone about exercise or movement pattern, my first rule is that it needs to feel fun. That's actually the most important rule. It needs to be fun, because again, if it's not, you're going to be operating at deprivation mode and you'll be off the bandwagon shortly, right? So I have to talk to that person. I have to get to know them. I have to tell them. And one of the first questions I ask, if they haven't been active in a while, I'll ask, when was the last time you were physically active and what were you doing and did you like it? And they'll say something like, yeah, I used to lap swim when I had this one job. There was this gym nearby. I used to swim every lunch break. I just felt good. It was so great. And I'll say, well, what happened? Well, we changed cities, we changed jobs. I got too busy this night. I'm like, okay. So then in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, we got to go back and recapture that mojo, right? Like, we know this person likes to swim, water's their thing. Like, how can we engage with that again? So it's got to feel fun. For some people, that's Zumba. For some people, it's taking a walk in the neighborhood with their dog. For some people, something aggressive like CrossFit or, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like whatever it is, it just needs to feel fun. And my job is to engage with what sounds fun for them and then overcome their current barriers to doing what is fun from a movement viewpoint, right? Because they used to do it, but now they're not for some reason. And so we got to troubleshoot these barriers, which gets into behavior change and psychology of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, to me, like we've found, I have a guy in the office that we work out together, but we've both found that instead of constantly trying to just hit the gym, we'll go play volleyball, we'll play basketball, we'll do that with other people in our neighborhood. And it actually works well because, like you said, it's fun. It's a social element. I really enjoy playing sports with people. I think it's a blast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that methodology. And again, we could go into like 5 episodes on each of these
Sure.
points. But
If I just mention something real quick too, I think, Josh, another key takeaway is to try to do something every day, right? So try to keep a little consistency with it. So it almost needs to become a habit of health. Like, you took a shower, you put on clean clothes and you brush your teeth today, I'm pretty sure, right? You didn't get too busy to do that. Well, it's got to get to that level where I'm not too busy to do my bit of movement today. That's fun and necessary for my body. And in that case, sometimes we have to help people avoid an all or nothing type of mentality, right? So some people feel like, oh, it doesn't count as a workout unless I go to the gym for 45 minutes and get super sweaty or something, right? And they're like, since I don't have time to do that right now, I do nothing, right? And that little gap right there is what we want to work on. So you're doing something at least every day, even if it's 10 minutes of stretching, even if it's 5 minutes of jumping jacks, like whatever it is, which interestingly enough, they've shown that if you crank up the intensity, you can get a lot done in a short amount of time, right? And this goes under the name of things like high intensity interval training and Tabata method and all of that. But what's fascinating is this guy Tabata, T-A-B-A-T-A, out of Japan. He was actually a researcher with the Japanese Olympic team. He was working with their cyclists. And his question was, what's the minimum effective duration of exercise that I can have these guys do and still perform at a high level, right? Instead of them having them on the spin bike, at X number of watts for 20 minutes, can I get equivalent out of 10 minutes, 5 minutes, et cetera, just by going up in intensity? And what was profound is he found that he had guys ultimately only doing 4 minutes of work. Okay. Wow. That's it. 4 minutes of work. And they were getting the same benefit at a high intensity. They were getting the same benefit as guys doing like 20, 30, 40 minutes at a lower intensity. So I tell people, you can get in shape in 4 minutes a day if you're willing. You can absolutely do that. There's ways. Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you have any recommendations of where to go to find workouts like that?
Yes, absolutely. So YouTube will be good for that. If you looked up Tabata, T-A-B-A-T workouts, you'll find some. And so each, as he traditionally defined it in the study he did, it was 20 seconds of intense exercise followed by 10 seconds of rest and then repeat. And that whole cycle was repeated for 4 minutes total. And there are some really good things on YouTube. So it's going to involve you doing something like jumping jacks or burpees for 20 seconds, 10 seconds of rest, jumping lunges, 10 seconds of rest, aggressive fast push-ups, 10 seconds of rest, that type of thing. But it can be done without a gym, without equipment. There are some really good trainers out there who have created systems.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious because I love to find little hacks like that, because that's something that you could literally do in your office on your quote unquote lunch break. If you take those, I know entrepreneurs, we never take lunch breaks, but take 5 minutes out of your day every day to schedule. I love that, because it doesn't matter how, heavy, skinny, out of shape, in shape you are. That's something everybody can do, is 5 minutes. And it doesn't require getting dressed even for that.
True. Just to emphasize that real quick, Josh, so you might find this, curious, maybe fascinating.
Sure.
A couple years ago, I had my goal, personally, fitness viewpoint, was to run a 6-minute mile. Okay. Something I had never done in my life. I was not a cross country runner in high school, college, nothing like that. Okay. And I'm kind of a bigger guy. I'm like 6'1.5", 210 pounds. And at the time I did this, I think was 38 years old. So for me to run a 6-minute mile, I was really going to have to get after it. Right. But I'm like, same thing. I'm busy, and I realized quickly, I was like, I don't have time to try to find some neighborhood school that's like 3 miles away, to like get changed, to like run around this track and get warmed up, and then, jump over the fence back to my car to drive home. I'm like, how am I going to train for this? You know what I did, Josh? I never went to a track the entire time I trained for my 6-minute mile. Zero. The first time I showed up on the track was test day. But what did I do? I did Tabata actually in my walk-in closet. If I was at home, I had a walk-in closet, I had enough room. That's typically where I do it. And what I did was I would sprint in place. Sprinting in place, like high knees, just pumping arms, sprinting, okay? 20 seconds, 10 seconds rest. When that started to feel easy, I grabbed hand weights. I was sprinting in place with 10-pound hand weights. When that got easy, I started to hold my breath. So that was the final level. By the time I was sprinting in place like a madman with 10-pound hand weights, holding my breath the whole time, that cranked me up. When I ran that mile, I was like, boom, blew through it. I got in under 6 minutes. And then I did it the next year just to prove to myself that it wasn't a fluke. And I lowered my time all the way to 5 minutes, 38 seconds.
Jeez. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. I love that.
Yep.
You've got me sold, because I hate running. So I'll make it fun for myself. Right.
There you go.
My wife loves running, so I think it's something I should do for her. Yeah, that's brilliant. Because these are the type of things that as entrepreneurs, we tend to, I would say even more so than most people, we're so excited about one area of life that we don't focus enough on adding in little habits like this. Because I know for myself, if I try to do a 5-minute workout, I'm in it. I'm like, I'm already here. And so I'll end up doing a 30-minute workout because I'm like, I'm here. But you don't even have to do that, which is amazing. It's so time conscious. If you tell me you don't have 5 minutes, you need to rethink your life. Right. Okay, let's move on to number 4. Like, we're probably over time here, but you've got me intrigued. So we're going to stay through all 5. So number 4 is mental health. Yeah. Yeah.
Mental health, stress management, this kind of thing. A huge dimension of health, right? Let's think about what's your self-talk, right? There's this idea of like positive self-talk. What's going on in your mind, right? Do you see the glass half empty, half full, all that bit, right? Obviously, to be a successful entrepreneur, I mean, it's the definition of overcoming obstacles and needing to persevere, right? Like, I am an entrepreneur myself. I run my own business. I don't work for anyone. I have Dr. Turner, MD, right? So I get it. You got staff, you got lawyers, you got the government. I mean, people are coming at you left, right, and center. And so how do we retain a resilient mindset, deal with that stress, leave work at work, be present for our spouse and loved ones at home, like all of that bit, huge element of health, avoiding burnout and all of that, right? This gets into all of that. Ultimately, if I had to give you one takeaway, it would be affirmations. That's the takeaway. It's literally writing some things out. I have 3x5 cards posted all over my bathroom mirror. I probably have 6 of them up there right now. And I'll usually just rethink these once a week. And it gets my mind to then focus on where do I want to go as an individual, my personal growth and development. What healthy script do I want running in my mind that's really going to serve me in the coming days and weeks? And so I'll just rotate those and memorize them and have them up there for reflection.
Love that. Yeah, it's funny. Have you ever seen that video? It's this little girl with curly hair, and she's like in the mirror. She's like, I love my hair. I love my face. I love my. Have you ever seen that one?
No, I haven't. No.
Look it up. It's absolutely famous. But they did a whole study on this because she started this phenomenon. It's crazy. Is that everyone was like, I wish I could be as confident as this girl. And it ended up becoming, this is like 5-10 years ago, but everybody started doing that to themselves. And they started doing actual scientific studies on just doing that and kind of like laughing at yourself while you do it. And I want to actually, like, you'll have to find the study and then quote it, but because I am not a doctor, but it like drastically increased all of their health levels, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And like from a success perspective, it helped dramatically from all angles. So definitely go watch that video. It's hilarious. Just say curly girl hairs. I love my hair. That's probably what that's probably what it is. I love my hair.
I'm intrigued.
I will Google it after this interview and send it to you. But anyway, so I love your input on that. Rethinking 5 affirmations a day. And people think that it's harder than that to control your mental health. But I feel like in today's world, we spend so much time packing in negativity that it's
Yes.
hard to sometimes realize that all you have to do is add a little bit of light in there and just watch what happens. You'll increasingly get better. I'm a huge advocate of, like, if you are having any sort of anxiety, completely eliminate social media from your life and completely stop watching the news. You can argue with me all you want on this, but I think those two things, just watch how much happier of a person you'd be after a month. It's crazy.
Yes, I agree.
Anyways, I'm not the doctor here. So let's go on to number 5, just kind of wrapping this up, right? So this is your social health.
Yeah, I call this social connectedness, right? I don't think you could qualify as a truly healthy human being if you're not healthy in your social relationships, right? And I think this is an area of a lot of need for people. Moreover, just within our society over the last year or two, with COVID, lockdowns, isolation, et cetera, people become isolated. And, it's kind of like this stat where they do these studies and like the average American adult male has got like 2 friends or something, right? And really, if you look this up, I remember reading this, like, oh my God, is it that bad? Oh my
That's
gosh.
really sad, actually.
But yeah, it's like 2.3 friends or something when they do the math. That's like,
oh man.
So yeah, really, it's so the social connection, because to take it kind of to a spiritual level, I think about what's our ultimate purpose as people, right? And what's our ultimate function. And I think I would encapsulate, best I understand, as to give and receive love. That's the punchline, right? Like, what's the purpose of life? It's to give and receive love. That's your goal as a human being, towards God and towards other people, to give and receive love. Well, love, that's a relational word right there. That requires somebody else, right? You're going to find out that you're most fulfilled when you are both giving and receiving love, but you need other human beings in your life to do that, and produces shockwaves of benefit of mental health and even into physical health and such. So that social piece, it's always easy to be too busy with our business to connect meaningful with our spouse, or to keep up with that friend from college or high school, right? Or to take our kids on a special father-daughter date or mom-son date or something like that. Like, it's always easy to be too busy for that, like it is to be too busy to exercise. But you got to get to a point where you say, this is non-negotiable. It's so important for me, right? You don't want to be that old person that your kids don't want to talk to you. They don't want to come by because you were so busy building the business and chasing it, or like whatever, right? But they don't have much relationship with you, right? Like, how happy are you going to be at that point? You're going to live in a big house with a gigantic bank account and a bunch of gold and cryptocurrency and like God knows what. And you guys sit there and be like, but my kids don't love me. And my spouse and I look at each other like strangers, right? Like, how happy are you going to be, and how healthy are you going to be, in that model? So my takeaway on that, and I'm preaching to myself, first of all, believe me, but my takeaway on that is to try to be intentional about investing in, let's say, just 1 or 2 key relationships each week. Make it a goal, right? Like, you got a business meeting this week with your VP of something, your sales team, your this and that. Do you have a personal, meeting this week with your spouse to take her on a date, or whatever it is? 1 to 2 key relationships you'd be investing in each week. Keep them up. I literally write a list for myself. I have sort of this list of like, who are my friends, right? Like, who are the people that I actually need to be intentional about, that I need to reach out and text this person or call them or try to arrange something, rather than just sitting passively back and hoping that I have relationships that are meaningful.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Man. Yeah. I think that's great. That's kind of sad to me to watch. And it's been interesting around, where I live. We found that every woman we talk to, we all talk about our spouses, and every single one of them feel like when I'm talking to the males, that all of the women feel like they don't have a single close relationship friend outside of their family. And I'd be curious to see the stat on that too. I think it's part of it is be that friend for other people too. Don't be the one to just be the leech and say, hey, I can be the friend to multiple people. My wife is an amazing friend to people. Just such a great job of putting way more into the relationship than they do. But it's interesting because very few women ever give her that back. And I'm like, if you'll even just reciprocate somebody's, intentions, it's just game changing. But love it. I feel like you could like create a whole platform around this of like the rule of 5s, right? Like, here are the 5 things you have to eat. Here are the 5-minute exercise and everything. Anyways, total tangent there. So, Dr. Turner, we've covered a lot of really awesome tips here, and I feel like everybody they're going to leave with at least one good takeaway from this. So, I appreciate you sharing that. So, where can people connect with you to kick this off?
michaelturnermd.com would be the place to go. I've also launched a podcast working with you guys and your team, which has been fantastic. So there's a link off of my webpage to podcast, and that'd be the place. Would love to begin a relationship of trying to reach out and share all my best knowledge, inspiration towards health and wellness with you and your clients, Josh.
Love it. So drturnermd.com, guys, make sure you go check that out. Sorry,
Thank you. It's Michael Turner. It's michaelturnermd.com.
Oh, that's what it is. michaelturnermd.com. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So make sure you guys go check that out, jump over to the link. And then just to kind of wrap this up, Dr. Turner, could you give our audience just one final parting piece of guidance?
The parting piece of guidance I would say would be to fall in love with that question: what would it feel like to be as healthy as I could possibly be? And then to start to take some concrete action towards that, right? Again, I would liken it to you starting your business and developing your business, right? At some point, there was this passion, this embryonic idea, like, what would it feel like, or what would it look like to start XYZ business, right? And then you got to just take that first baby step, right? It's kind of like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. That's what I'm talking about. I want you inspired on a journey of 1,000 miles, and then just make it concrete with just 1 or 2 steps. And eventually you'll get there, right? And as you know, to build a successful business, you're glad that you don't know all the obstacles and setbacks and difficulty ahead of time, because you might have gotten dissuaded, right? But you're just full of passion. You're just like, let's go for it. Let's just file the business license. Woo, I'm incorporated. Here we go, baby. And it's like, we're off. That's kind of where we're at now. It's like, it's a long journey. It's going to be setbacks, blah, blah. But, get in touch with your passion and your drive of what would it feel like to be as healthy as I could be? What kind of benefit would that have for me? And here's one thing I'm going to start to do. I'm going to pick one of these 5 dimensions. I'm going to do one thing this week. And then it's just rolling after that. You start to get the momentum, and it feeds back on itself. It's a positive feedback loop, right? To feel healthy is to have more energy, is to have more motivation, more enthusiasm, is to do further things to feel healthy, and it starts to snowball.